Past the saga of Isis, the legend of eternal rebirth in the lands, where the Nile whispered ancestral secrets to golden sands, where the sun was born as a god and died as a martyr each day, lived a woman whose destiny was intertwined with the very fibers of creation. Isis was not merely beautiful. She was the very definition of beauty that transcends mortal form. Her eyes held the wisdom of the stars. Her hands carried the power to heal wounds that not even time could close. And her heart pulsed with a love so pure it could resurrect the dead. But it had not always been so. Before becoming the great mother, the queen of magic, the guardian of mysteries, Isis was just a young goddess learning to navigate the labyrinths of divine power. Born from the union between Geb, the earth that breathes, and Nut, the sky that embraces. She grew up knowing her destiny was linked to that of her brothers, Osiris, the just ruler who would make civilization flourish, Set, the lord of storms, and Fury, and Nephthys, her shadow sister, eternally divided between light and darkness. Isis's first great love was not sudden passion, but the gradual recognition of a soul mate. Osiris was everything she admired in a being: compassionate without being weak, strong without being cruel, wise without being arrogant. When he assumed the throne of Egypt, transforming nomadic tribes into a prosperous civilization, Isis saw in him not just the man she loved, but the leader the world needed. Together, they were more than rulers. They were the very essence of harmony, the perfect balance between power and benevolence. It was precisely this perfection that Set could not bear. The younger brother had always lived in Osiris's shadow, and each act of the king's kindness was like a dagger to his chest. Set was not evil by nature. He was a god consumed by envy, a powerful being who allowed himself to be corroded by resentment, until his soul transformed into something unrecognizable. For years, he plotted in silence, smiling at banquets while forging daggers in his heart. The trap Set prepared was a masterpiece of deception. During a great celebration in honor of Osiris, he presented a sarcophagus of black wood and gold, inlaid with jewels that shone like captured stars, a gift worthy of a king. He declared with a smile that did not reach his eyes, but only he, whose body fits perfectly, may possess it. It was an irresistible challenge, and one by one, the guests tested the sarcophagus. Naturally, only Osiris fit. After all, Set had secretly measured his brother while he slept. The moment Osiris lay down in the sarcophagus, laughing at the coincidence, Set and his accomplices acted with the speed of serpents. The lid closed with a crash that echoed like the end of the world, and before anyone could react, the sarcophagus was sealed with molten lead and hurled into the Nile, the sacred waters, which once carried life to all the land, now carried away its source. Isis felt Osiris's death before she even saw it. It was as if part of her soul was torn away, leaving a void that screamed in silence. But where others would see only tragedy, she saw a calling. In that moment of absolute pain, something awakened within Isis, a power she didn't even know she possessed, a determination that would transform a grieving wife into the most implacable force the world had ever known. Isis's journey defined. Her beloved's body became a legend whispered in temples and sung by bards. She traveled through Egypt like a storm of determination, questioning every fisherman, every merchant, every child who played on the river's banks. Her search took her far beyond the borders of her homeland. Disguised as a common woman, she crossed deserts that could break the will of the strongest, sailed through tempestuous seas that swallowed entire ships, and faced creatures that existed only in mortals' nightmares. During her search, Isis discovered powers she never imagined she possessed. The pain of losing Osiris had broken the barriers that limited her magic. She could converse with the winds, which whispered clues about the sarcophagus's whereabouts. Wild animals became her allies, guiding her through dangerous territories. The very stars seemed to rearrange themselves in the sky to illuminate her path. But the powers came with a price. Each spell she cast, each miracle she performed, drained a little of her humanity. Isis felt herself transforming into something beyond mortal comprehension, and sometimes wondered if, at the end of her journey, anything would remain of the woman Osiris had loved. The search led her to the Phoenician cities, where she learned that a mysterious sarcophagus had arrived at the coast and lodged itself in the roots of a gigantic tree. The local king, impressed with the beauty of the tree that had grown overnight, had cut its trunk to make a column in his palace. Isis infiltrated the palace as a servant, using her wisdom and compassion to win the queen's trust. When she finally revealed her true identity, The majesty of her presence was such that mortals fell to their knees, instinctively recognizing they were before a primordial force of creation. Recovering the body was only the first step of an even more impossible journey. When Isis opened the sarcophagus and saw Osiris, her heart broke again. There was the man she loved, but he was no longer a man. He was a lifeless body, pale and motionless as cold marble. Still, she saw beauty where others would see only death. To her, Osiris was not dead. He was merely asleep, waiting for the right kiss to awaken. Isis took the body back to Egypt, hiding it in the Delta swamps, far from Set's eyes. There, in the solitude of whispering reeds, she began to perform the greatest miracle ever attempted by a divine being. Night after night, she sang enchantments that made the stars weep. Her tears, mixed with sacred herbs and words of power she invented in moments of most desperate need, slowly returned color to Osiris's face. But Set was no fool. He felt Isis's magic disturbing the order he had established. One night, when the moon was merely a scar in the sky, he found his sister-in-law's hiding place. The fury that consumed him upon seeing Osiris almost restored was like a desert fire, destructive and impossible to control. In an explosion of divine rage, Set tore his brother's body into 14 pieces and scattered them throughout Egypt, throwing some into the Nile, burying others in the desert, hiding parts in desecrated temples. This second blow could have broken anyone. Isis fell to her knees among the wreckage of her hope, and for one terrible moment, considered abandoning everything. The task now seemed impossible even for a goddess. How could she find 14 pieces scattered across a land as vast as Egypt itself? How could she rebuild a body from dispersed fragments? But it was precisely in this moment of complete despair that Isis discovered her true strength. It was not just love that moved her. It was something deeper, a fundamental understanding that some things are worth any sacrifice. She rose from the sands, and when she did, she was no longer just a wife seeking her husband. She was a force of nature, a manifestation of life's unbreakable will to continue existing against all odds. Isis's second search became a legendary journey that transformed Egypt itself. In each city where she found a piece of Osiris, she built a temple. Local priests, touched by her determination, became her allies. Common people, inspired by her unshakable faith, joined the search. Children ran through markets shouting that they had seen something strange. Old sages interpreted dreams that might contain clues, and even animals seemed to understand the importance of her mission. But finding the pieces was only half the battle. Isis discovered that the magic necessary to reunite a dismembered body was different from anything she had ever attempted. She needed to learn new types of enchantments, forms of magic that touched the very laws of life and death. Each piece required a different ritual, a unique approach. The heart needed to be awakened with songs of eternal love. The hands needed to be revived with memories of all the kind acts they had performed. The feet needed to be restored with visions of all the paths they still had to walk. During this epic search, Isis was not alone. Her sister Nephthys, who had deeply repented of allying herself with Set, joined the search. Anubis, Nephthys' son, but raised by Isis, became her guardian and guide through the realms of the dead. Thoth, the god of wisdom, offered arcane knowledge that no mortal should possess. Even some minor gods, touched by the purity of her love, whispered secrets that helped in the reconstruction. When Isis finally gathered 13 of the 14 pieces, she faced a seemingly insurmountable problem. The 14th piece, an intimate part of Osiris, had been devoured by fish in the Nile. Without this essential part, how could she complete the resurrection? It was then that Isis's magic reached its peak. Using all her wisdom, all her understanding of creation's mysteries, she molded a substitute made of pure gold and sacred herbs, imbuing it not just with magic, but with the very essence of creative power. This act was not just a demonstration of magical skill. It was a redefinition of what it meant to be complete. The final resurrection ritual lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Isis transformed into a falcon, her wings extended over Osiris's reconstructed body, beating in a rhythm that echoed the first heartbeats of the universe. She sang words that had never been spoken, created melodies that made gods weep, and evoked powers so ancient they preceded time's own existence. On the 3rd day, when the sun rose golden over the sands, Osiris opened his eyes. But he was not the same man who had died. The experience of death and rebirth had transformed him. He now carried the wisdom of one who had walked in both worlds. the authority of one who knew the secrets beyond the veil. Osiris had become something new, not just a king, but the Lord of the dead, the judge who would weigh the hearts of all those who pass from life to what comes after. The reunion between Isis and Osiris was a moment of indescribable beauty. It was not just the embrace of two lovers reunited, but the mutual recognition that both had been transformed through ordeal. Isis was no longer just a devoted wife. She was the great mother, the master of magic, the protector of all those who suffer. Osiris was no longer just a kind king. He was the guardian of eternal justice, the one who would ensure that good was rewarded and evil punished, even beyond death. From this transformed union was born Horus, but not as a common son. Isis knew that Horus would carry the destiny of avenging his father and restoring order to the world. During pregnancy, she hid in the swamps, protecting the child growing in her womb with powerful magics. Each enchantment she wove around the unborn baby was a promise that he would be invincible, that he would carry not just her strength and Osiris's wisdom, but something new, the justified fury of one born to correct the world's wrongs. When Horus was born, Set immediately knew his greatest nightmare had become reality. Osiris's son was not just an heir, but a force of nature created specifically to overthrow him. Set's attempts to destroy the child became increasingly desperate, but Isis was always one step ahead, protecting her son with a ferocity that made lions seem like lambs. The battle between Horus and Set lasted decades, and throughout this time, Isis was more than a mother. She was the strategist, the guardian, the inexhaustible source of her son's strength. She healed his wounds when Set nearly blinded him, restored his determination when he doubted his ability to win, and offered wisdom when brute force was not enough. Horus's final victory was not just personal revenge, but the restoration of cosmic order. Set was defeated and banished to the desert, where his fury could express itself through sandstorms without harming innocents. Osiris assumed his place as king of the dead, ensuring eternal justice, and Horus became the legitimate pharaoh, ruling with his father's wisdom and his mother's protection. But for Isis, the true victory was not in the throne or revenge. It was an understanding that she had discovered something fundamental about the nature of existence. True love is not just a feeling, it is a creative force capable of defying nature's very laws. Death is not an end, but a transformation, and sometimes one must break completely to discover how strong one truly is. Isis became Egypt's most beloved goddess, but her influence spread far beyond her homeland's borders. In Rome, Greeks, Celts, and even distant peoples built temples in her honor, recognizing in her not just a divinity, but an example of how love can transcend any obstacle. She was the perfect mother, the devoted wife, the supreme magician, and the guardian of the oppressed. Her tears became the Nile's annual floods, which fertilized the land and brought new life each year. Her enchantments became the healing rituals that saved countless lives. Her story became the promise that even in the deepest darkness, there is always a light waiting to be reborn. But perhaps Isis's greatest legacy is the lesson her saga teaches, that we are not defined by what we lose, but by what we are willing to do to recover what we love. That true strength does not come from the absence of fear, but from the decision to keep fighting despite fear. And that sometimes the act of saving someone we love ends up transforming us into something we never knew we could become. In the temples where her story is still sung, in moments when mothers rock their children with ancient songs, in the hearts of those who refuse to give up even when all seems lost, Isis continues to live, not as a distant goddess, but as the eternal personification of the truth that true love is the most powerful force in the universe, capable of resurrecting the dead, of transforming tragedy into triumph, and of proving that some things are truly eternal. And when people ask if miracles really exist, those who know Isis's story simply smile and whisper, "Ask a mother who saved her child, a wife who brought her husband back from darkness, anyone who chose love over fear." They will tell you that miracles are not legends of the past. They are possibilities waiting to be born whenever someone refuses to accept that some battles cannot be won. Isis's saga does not end, because it is being rewritten every day by all those who choose to fight for what they love, who refuse to accept defeat, who discover that within them exists a force capable of moving mountains and resurrecting dreams. She is living proof that we are all more powerful than we imagine, more resilient than we believe, and more capable of love than we ever dreamed possible. And so, the legend continues, not in ancient books or ruined temples, but in the hearts of those who understand that each of us carries a bit of Isis's magic. The magic of never giving up, of always finding a way, of transforming pain into power and love into miracle.